SuperTalk Mississippi media production. Middays with Gerard Gibert is on the air. Middays with Gerard Gibert is powered by C-Spire. Power your home or business with C-Spire Fiber. To learn more, visit supertalk.fm/C-Spire. C-Spire Fiber powers SuperTalk Mississippi. Get ready to go beyond the headlines and join a meaningful conversation with people from around the state. You're listening to Middays with Gerard Gibert here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Everyone, and welcome to Middays, SuperTalk Mississippi. I'm your host, Gerard Gibert, along with Rhino in the Element Wealth Studio, guiding you through the middle of your day with facts, fodder, and fine music on this
Friday, y'all.
Well, HB2. It passed by the slimmest of margins yesterday in the Mississippi House of Representatives. That occurred right after we got off the air. I was going to head down there thinking, they're going to be talking about this thing for a long time. HB2, of course, the Education Freedom Act, the so-called school choice bill, a sweeping one. And it was over by the time I got to a point I could head down there. So, and we're going to discuss this in detail today because this is big-time pivotal legislation in our state and in the history of our state. Now, of course, all that has occurred thus far is that it's part of the lawmaking process. As far as that's concerned, it is through one chamber, that being the Mississippi House. Now, Rhino, I got to tell you, the procession for this measure to be transferred down the hall to the Senate, surely you got something special cooked up, even beyond the T-Rex and the Patriot man on the unicycle. What are you adding to this event?
Well, this is more of a sideshow because they can't really get through the doors at the Capitol. But while the procession is going on, out on the lawn, you've got monster trucks doing backflips.
I love it. Of course, with the proper permits from the authorities, right? We wouldn't think of anything less than that. So, the Democratic caucus of the House, they've made a statement. Shall I read it for the folks here? Today, members of the Mississippi House Democratic Caucus voted no on House Bill 2. We believe in improving educational outcomes for Mississippi's children, but HB 2 fails that test. This $165 million bill combines multiple major policy changes into one massive package, rejects every Democratic amendment aimed at accountability and transparency, and diverts public dollars without holding private schools to the same standards required of our public schools. Mississippi public schools educate the vast majority of our students, yet HB 2 prioritizes new, unproven programs while leaving classrooms, educators in rural and underserved communities with unmet needs. If they want to spend $165 million, they should spend it on strengthening the public schools that serve every child in every community across Mississippi with real accountability for how taxpayer dollars are used. House Democrats remain committed to protecting public education, supporting educators, and demanding transparency, equity, and responsibility in education policy. So to all the Republicans in the House that voted against this measure, you find yourself now, and you know this before you voted for it, and honestly, Rhino, all those in our state who would hold themselves as staunch conservative Republicans who oppose this policy, they're pretty strongly aligned here with the old Democrats in the state and the House Democrats. I got to say something about this transparency and accountability, that talking point. So, are we now saying these same people who are demanding transparency and accountability, have they all of a sudden had an epiphany and have decided that government's really good at transparency and accountability? You consumers, particularly you parents, you don't know what's best for your child. You can't make those decisions. You can't determine whether or not the education being delivered to your child, say by a private entity, oh my gosh, we got to put government in there to make sure that they're successfully and effectively educating your child. You can't possibly figure that out. You need us to come in with our transparency and accountability. Horse hockey. The market is always superior to government in regulation, in accountability. It will speak loudly. Government falls short of that mark in every situation. Man, why do we always look to government? Oh, we got to have government involved. We can't hold people accountable without government. We can't make sure that outcomes are optimized without government.
Because liberals, Democrats, leftists, communists, socialists, and every other idiot to the left of center relies on a very infantile, juvenile mindset where they have to appeal to an authority that they don't like because that's part and parcel of their entire personality, is that they hate their parents, they hate authority, they hated their teachers, they hated the cops, they hate anybody that tells them no.
That's sadly true. What's bothering me here, Rhino, is that many of my good friends who are Republicans feel the same way. They're aligning with the Democrats in this respect. Tell me they're not. Tell me they're not. How can you say that? Because they voted the same. They're using the same talking points. So on the C Spire text line, Derek in Greenwood says, call me a Democrat, then remove the private school language and stop M on board. I'm not, what's he saying there, Rhino? He said, I work my ass off to provide private school for my kids. Don't tell me I have to subsidize people coming into the school I pay for too. Well, I hear you, Derek, but the reality is the way that we fund government and government services through our taxes, I don't think any of us can say, well, yeah, I get direct benefit from every single dollar. There's an indirect aspect of this. We believe that optimizing education and maximizing the result of education for children, it provides overall benefit to society. I mean, that's the idea here. The idea here is to empower parents to make those decisions because they're closer to their students. And by the way, I've had people argue, well, we can't do that because these functions are better orchestrated, managed by government, such as public systems, water, transportation infrastructure. Well, the difference is the way we use that is standard, is consistent, regardless of who the consumer is. However, when it comes to education, that's highly individualized. Children are different. We're unique. That's the way God made us. That's the beauty of human beings and humanity itself. to suggest that, we got to have a collective effort from government to deliver this service, just as we do with roads and bridges and water and public works, etc., and equating that to educating a unique child, that's basically advocating for the one-size-fits-all education model. And that also presumes that children are the same, that every child can be educated under the same model, the same system, the same accountability standards, same environment. Well, that basically argues that children aren't unique, don't have a unique identity, a unique makeup and profile. Simply not true. I don't see how anybody could argue that. But equating children and the provision of education to the provision of roads and bridges, that blew me away right there. Well, we're going to take a break right now. We got Rob Roberson. He chairs the House Education Committee in the House. He'll be with us next.
Hey, this is Bob, and if you're...
This segment of Middays with Gerard Gibert is brought to you by Covington County Hospital in Collins, where your health matters.
Bring it on! Middays with Gerard Gibert.
It is on!
On SuperTalk, Mississippi.
We're trying to get Representative Rob Roberson on the line. So much misinformation out there on this deal. Okay, we got Rob? Representative Roberson.
Can y'all hear me?
Yeah, we got you, man. I see you. We got you. Great deal. All right.
Good deal. I'm sorry.
Oh, no problem. Understand. Sometimes there are little technical glitches, but worked it out. Good to have you. We've been talking this morning in the first segment about what was a major occurrence there in the Mississippi House of Representatives, something I know that you have worked on very hard, not just this year, but in prior years as well, and many others across the state, as you well know, to get some expansion of education freedom in the state of Mississippi. The bill HB 2, the Speaker, of course, the author, and it's a large and rather sweeping bill. Includes a number of provisions, but the bottom line is it passed yesterday on the House floor by the narrowest of margins. Right, Representative Roberson? You had a 60 to 58 final count. And if one had gone in the nay column, we would have had a 59-59, and that means the measure fails to pass.
That's right. That's right. It's interesting whenever you have a bill that has the kind of dynamics at play here, and you get the kind of attack from both ends. You might be doing something right. I had a lot of people that were upset because they didn't feel like it went far enough. I had some people that felt like it went way too far. So I think this bill has some balance to it. I think that even one of our my friends on the Democrat side actually tried to amend it to go full blown school choice, and that amendment was blocked when it was all said and done. But the whole point and purpose of this was to give us a balanced approach as to get involved in this and do this the best we could while keeping some budgetary constraints on each side of it. So I've heard it said a million times that if you're kind of getting it from both ends, you might be kind of right in that sweet spot, maybe where we need to be. Yeah. But it was a long debate. It was a good debate. A lot of good questions came out yesterday. Hopefully, a lot of good answers were provided. But sometimes, whenever you go into something like this, people's minds are made up. Even in the legislature, believe it or not, you're not going to change the world by anything that's said on that floor sometimes. But we were up there for over 4 hours debating, having a conversation about it. And the beauty of this is in Mississippi, I don't believe we can talk about anything better than talking about education. Short of talking about economic development and things like that, the bedrock of moving Mississippi forward is going to be having a good educated population. And having this conversation is probably the best thing that we should be spending our time on. So I'm excited about it. I hate that it has created a little bit of a windstorm, especially on social media. You would think on social media that there's nothing but negative naysayers at times. But the truth is, I think there's a lot of people in Mississippi that understand what we're trying to do. Obviously, there's a lot of people that don't understand, and that's the reason we want to get out here and talk about this as much as we can and keep this discussion going.
You're so right about that, and there's so much misinformation and misunderstanding, and that narratives get started and then they become viral and they take hold and they get viewed as gospel, as the saying goes, and it just takes time to sort it out and to filter it and to explain the actual truth. It's so much misinformation, and I know you hear it, you've seen it, the members, your colleagues have heard it, seen it as well. But it is interesting, and that's why we've spent a lot of time trying to dig through it. One thing I wanted to ask you was about the changes made from the original bill, I guess a substitute, if I'm not mistaken, that modified the expansion of charter schools in the state. So, right. As you know, present law, charter schools can only locate in a D or F district. I think the original legislation of HB 2 was going to expand that to allow them to locate anywhere in any district. And then that got pulled back, right, got modified to, well, if a district has a D or F school located within it, a charter school could locate there. A school's grade is different than a district's grade. So it's kind of a compromise. So I just got to ask you, Mr. Chairman, was that in order to get the necessary votes, you think, to get this out of a committee or off the floor?
I would suggest that maybe that may have been more of an expansive dynamic on the floor. I do think we had some folks that may have been a little more worried about what this would look like in their own district. When you talk about education, you're talking about local politics at its best or at its worst, however you want to look at this. So the reality is that we looked at this. The compromise was to try to give the charter schools the ability to expand a little bit. Listen, we've got a lot of work to do in charter schools and, frankly, in education systems, period. But it's interesting when you hear people talk about, well, charter schools have done poorly in some spots. Well, the truth is that we've only allowed them to go into these spots that have D and F areas, and they were, for lack of a better way of saying this, that they were pretty bad to start with. So if we can get any improvement in that arena, we're moving in the right direction. Now, is it moving fast enough as far as I'm concerned? No, sir, it's not. But we've got to do something to help move them in a direction that makes this make sense if we're going to have charter schools in Mississippi.
Agree. And beyond the fact that, in addition to the fact, I guess I should say, that they can only locate in the failing districts, typically what you attract are the students that are having the most difficult time in the public schools. That's right. Why they're moving over. And we talked about this on the show. And you and I have both talked to many parents. It's not so much academics that's the issue. It's that the bullying that occurs.
There's a tremendous amount of bullying that's going on. And 100 years ago when you and I were in K through 12, bullying went on back then too. I think back then there was a little bit more of a remedy for bullying. I can remember a couple of my coaches coming in with their paddle that they had named, and I won't get into the names of their paddles.
Me too.
They would be able to go clean some things up. That doesn't happen as much anymore.
Can't do it.
It's hard. It's hard to control.
Agree. Our teachers have their hands tied to a great extent, so they can't discipline the way you and I were disciplined. And then the other thing is, it only occurred at school, or maybe a little bit if they saw each other in the neighborhoods after school. Now it's this social media thing, and it's 7/24, so they're constantly exposed to it.
Social media has changed the game across the board for everything. And I don't care whether you're talking about schools or you're talking about politics for that matter. Social media has given a microphone to anybody that wants to go out here and say anything they want. Some of the statements that have been made about school choice, in my opinion, have been, not only has it been propaganda, and I wish I could have a nicer word than lie, but some of it has been just plain and simply lies that have been perpetrated across the board, and people believe this stuff, and then they get to say anything they want to say after that, and they have a tendency to attack members of the legislature, members that don't, and this happens on both sides. I don't want to suggest that it doesn't happen on both sides. It happens on both sides, but it's a shame that we can't have a conversation that's civil without having an audience, because a lot of this stuff is based on the fact that you want to get all of your people riled up and continue talking about this stuff. And that's a lot what in the radio world, you got shock jocks that come out there and they will say something that's just terribly ugly just to get this rolling. And you have people that take the bait. I've tried to refrain from getting on there and doing that. What I would like to do is somebody has got to drive the vehicle and make sure that we're not getting in either side of the ditch. And I think that's what Speaker Jason White's trying to do. That's what I'm trying to do.
Can you hang around with us for another segment?
Yes, sir. I'm here as long as you want me.
That sounds fantastic. We got House Education Committee Chairman Rob Roberson on the line talking about HB2. Stay with us. Coming right back in the Element Wealth studio.
From the Seabrook.com, you're listening to Middays with Gerard here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
That was for you, Representative Roberson, because we do see the AC/DC logo prominently displayed in the background there. That's pretty cool.
One of my favorite songs.
Awesome. So I got to pass this on. We got somebody on the C Spire text line. It's Randy in Starkville, says, please tell Rob to hang tough. He's not appreciated enough. He's a good cafe buddy. So there you go. Want to pass that on.
I know him well. He's a good guy.
Awesome. So this is one of those issues that, strangely enough, finds Republicans and Democrats in alignment. You did pull a couple of Democrat votes, I believe, Representative Roberson. Is that right on this bill?
I'll be honest with you. I have refrained from looking at it, and I'm going to not look at it for a little while. That's purposeful. My friends, I've got 121 other folks in that building.
Sure. And
I love them dearly. And they vote, and they try to vote their district. When you're the chairman of education, you try to vote your district, but you also try to vote what's best for the state of Mississippi. I'm lucky. I've got a great school system in Starkville County, and I've got a heck of a superintendent and administrators and teachers. They're good people. But I have to think of this in terms of what's in the best interest of the whole state. And a lot of our members, Democrat and Republican, when I said earlier that this is a local political issue, there's no way around it. That you don't get any closer to dealing with I guess bread and butter issues for a community than their education system. And a lot of the arguments that have come up, they've been based on fear. They haven't been based on meanness. They haven't been based on and honestly, sure. I don't think they've been based on political agendas. I think it's been based on fear. And as long as I am chairman of the House Education Committee, and I know that on the Senate side we've got some good people over there that are Chairman DeBar, when we sit around and talk, we don't sit and talk about how this is going to affect us personally or how this is going to affect our political careers. We talk about how this is going to affect kids and move forward. So the bottom line here is that we've got to get we've got to stop being afraid. I've made the comment several times that the sky is not falling. Public schools are going to be public schools in the future. We're going to have them. We're going to support them. We're going to continue moving forward. It's absolutely amazing to me that some of the strides that we have made over the last 8 or 10 years, they've been made by the same people that are bringing this new stuff to the table. These things have done really good things, and some of the same people that were opposed to the reading gate and opposed to the things that we were doing back then are some of the same people that are opposed to this. And it blows my mind that now, and as they look back retrospectively, they somehow seem to think they were in favor of it, and they weren't.
Yeah.
The sky was falling back then. The sky was not falling back then. The sky is not falling now. We're just trying to help some parents be a little bit more involved and be a little bit more in control of where their kid goes to school. And if I hear one more time that we don't want those kids showing up at our school, I want to know who those kids are. Explain to me, because those are my babies. They should be everyone's babies.
Hear. I couldn't agree more. And unfortunately, as you know, that is a factor here, and that is top of mind for a lot of people who oppose this legislation. It unfortunately has to do with the profile of the family and the student as to why they oppose it. And that fear, which is totally unfounded and just wrong in my view, but that's my opinion there. But this is a situation where you had a number of Republicans who, look, as you said, they feel like they voted their district. They heard strong outcry from their constituents who voiced their opposition to this legislation. You had some who heard that but still voted in the yay column. You're aware of that as well. But ultimately got this.
Very aware.
Yeah. And, that was tough for them. And unfortunately, as you know, this is the part of politics that is kind of the nasty aspect of it. Those folks are expressing their discontent, I'll put it that way, to those reps that voted in favor of this legislation, including in my home county of Madison. And nearby Rankin County as well. Those are two counties where lots of constituents don't support this legislation, and they're going after those couple of reps that voted in favor of it.
Here's the funny thing to me. Whenever I was running, and every time I run, people tell me they want people to make decisions and be strong in their values, strong in what they feel. And that seems to be the case until you disagree with them.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, then they want you to change positions, and then they want you to agree with them. I've had my share of folks that say, well, I'll remember you in the ballot box. Well, do that. That's fine. I'm going to continue being the person that I was when I was elected, and I'm going to continue being that same person in the future. I know how to get reelected. All you have to do to get reelected is do nothing. All you have to do is ride right down under the radar, and the folks will vote for you over and over again. That's not where my head and heart is. I think that if we're going to Jackson, or if you're going to the D.C. and you're going to represent your community, be that guy that is a change maker and a change maker in the best sense of the word.
Yeah.
Try to be somebody that's a statesman. I had the opportunity to meet Thad Cochran, and one of the things that always impressed me about him was, he wasn't one of these people that ran out and got in front of a camera constantly. But you don't have to do anything more than to ride around in my own community, and you'll see the things that he was able to do and accomplish out there on my university campus, and hardly ever took credit for it.
Yeah.
And so I want to be that guy that tries to make Mississippi better. I think we have a large group of our constituent base that really don't understand that. I didn't get elected to be somebody. I got elected to do something and accomplish something that's good for our state. And I genuinely believe that in the long run that everyone will see that this is good for the state.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with you, and I think you did a great job in making that point. I did look up. It looks like no Democrats voted in favor of the bill. I don't know why. I thought maybe one or two crossed over, but that's the information. Rhino, you may want to check me out on that as well. That's the best I can see.
I think you're correct.
Yeah,
I think you are.
Yeah. So would you mind, for the benefit of our audience, just start at the high level with the Magnolia student accounts and just explain the mechanics of how that works and the approach there?
Sure. The account, MSA is set up in a pool of students that can go. That's 12,500 kids that can go. 6,250 kids in one pocket. 600. I don't know if you can hear the ambulance.
We got it, man. Something going on there. Yeah, no problem.
They're coming to get me and take me away, I guess. But there's two pockets. The 6,250 in the first pocket, 6,250 in the second pocket.
Okay.
The first pocket is set up to be only set up for children that are in public schools, and the guardrails on both of them, but I'll start with this one, are 100%, 200%, and 300% of the median income. So for argument's sake, using $50,000 as your median income, those parents with those children get the first bite at the apple. So they are put ahead of everyone else, so that we have an idea that makes certain that the kids that may be lower in the lower poverty rank get that opportunity. In the second pot, it's both public and private, and it's still got the 100, 200, and 300% of the median income. Now, the reason we did it that way was because we're well aware that there are people living in districts that may have a failing school system, that these folks are working 2 and 3 jobs to make certain that their child can go to that private school. So we're still putting this in that pocket of money, allowing those parents that opportunity first. So out of those 2 pockets, you still have the same guardrails. You still have the kids that may need it the most, that may be coming from more of a poverty area. If I have one more person tell me that this was only for rich people, that I really want to pull my hair out even more than it's all about. But the reality is that the whole point of this, Speaker White was very clear when we started this that he wanted to make certain that those that needed it first had that opportunity first. And we've done that. The parts of this that roll on, we have expanded the ESA side of it.
Yeah.
Hold
that thought, Rob. We're going to take a break right here. We're coming right back. We'll continue this discussion with Representative Rob Roberson. He chairs the House Ed Committee, talking about the passage in the House of Representatives of HB 2, the Education Freedom Act. Stay with us.
Now back to Middays with Gerard here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays. We've got Representative Rob Roberson. He heads up the Education Committee in the House, talking about HB2, the sweeping education freedom legislation. So, Rob, appreciate you giving us a breakdown. The point is, the bill actually stops short of what would be generally referred to as universal school choice, which means that every student in the K through 12 age, those families of those students would have access to the state funds associated with their education, roughly $7,000. And that's where you saw a lot of objection. My guess is, Representative Roberson, you probably couldn't get that through the House. That's really what was on the table last year, right? It phased in, and other states have done that, because that means those who presently have children in private schools would have access to that $7,000, and I don't think there's an appetite for that. We could debate the merits of that, of course, a lot, but just for the purposes of our audience, we start out at $12,500, scale that up to, $20,000 in 4 or 5 years, and then there's some other triggers to go above that. But it's limited, and there's a cost associated with that because, as you indicated, like in the first years, half of those are available to those that aren't presently in public schools, and that means that's more money out of the Treasury that we're currently not having to pay to educate those children in public schools. Just wanted to clarify that and let you talk.
That's correct, and a lot of people they put this astronomical number on what the HB2 does. The reality is that we're already spending a good portion of this money in our system currently, and you're right. I don't think there was an appetite to go universal, even though most states that surround us have already done that. I think there was some budget constraints that we were a little bit nervous about, and those are founded. We need to be aware of where we are budgetarily.
Yep.
But to suggest that we're doing some horrific, horrible thing to public schools, there's no way in the world that 12,500 kids or 20,000 kids are going to make that large of an impact in the budget as a whole. On top of it all, and this is the part that seems to be missing in a lot of folks, the local contribution stays in that school district. There's no additional money coming from the local part. It still goes to your schools, which historically has been used for your buildings and your infrastructure type needs that they do there. Now, is it enough? In a lot of places, it's not enough. But the bottom line is we were doing a very measured approach to this, so that we didn't have a situation where the budget was blown completely out. A lot of the people that have targeted this, they use Arizona for an example that the budget got completely blown away.
Yep.
Well, let me remind people of the reason that budget may have gotten blown away was because it was so popular.
Right. Exactly
it wasn't
right.
because it was a failing system. It was so popular.
Yeah, it exceeded what they projected and expected, and that increased the cost that they projected, and that caused a problem, which is why, as you know, subsequent to that, states like Arkansas and others, they had a very controlled, if you will, and well thought out phasing in of that to ensure that it could be afforded. But the point is, in Mississippi, we're not doing that. We stopped short of that. We're just putting out there up to 20,000, and then I believe you've got some criteria to go beyond that in the out years, right? Beyond 2030.
That's correct.
All right, so something else, please explain to our audience. This isn't just cash money we're sending out to parents here that apply for these Magnolia student accounts and are qualified and approved. Talk about that.
Well, I think it was said on the floor that we're just giving this money away to people and they can go and take it and spend it on whatever. That is not what we're doing. This money is earmarked for their child's education. Guess what? That money was earmarked for their education before. It's earmarked for their education now. There is no element to this that is suggestive that you can go out and buy you a new car, or you can go out and go to the casino with it. That's not what this has done. And I think there was some conversation about the homeschoolers getting $1,000 per student up to $2,000 per family, and they could just do whatever, and there wouldn't be any constraints to that. I don't believe that there's anybody in this world, if you are educating your child, thinks, whether it was at homeschool or whatever, that $1,000 or $2,000 is going to actually cover that cost. We're going to have systems set up to where they can purchase equipment or purchase curriculum that they can go to and purchase those things from to help homeschoolers. But I also had some pushback from my homeschoolers that didn't want this money.
Yeah.
And no one is forcing this money on anyone. This is we're allowing this to be used for the child's education.
Right.
So the freedom of this.
Hey, Rob, can you hang on?
Is what it is.
Can you hang on and keep talking? Are you good? Okay, we got a top of the hour break.
Yes,
coming right back.
Of Middays with Gerard Gibert is brought to you by the Mississippi Business Journal. Visit msbusinessjournal.com. Scott Coopwood, publisher and president.
Get ready to go beyond the headlines and join a meaningful conversation with people from around the state. You're listening to Middays with Gerard Gibert here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays from the Element Well studio on this
Friday, y'all.
We're talking to Representative Rob Roberson. He's in the House, of course, in Mississippi, but he chairs, more importantly, the House Education Committee. That's important because perhaps one of the most sweeping bills pertaining to education ever in the state's history passed by the slimmest of margins yesterday off the floor. And that would be a program that includes lots of different provisions, but, of course, the highest profile of those is the creation of some additional school choice and education freedom options. So this concern, of course, Representative Roberson, about we're just going to send money out to parents and they're not going to use it for its intended purposes, that's absolutely not true. And we've got a number of other states, as you know, that have already implemented these programs, that have put these mechanisms in place. And we know they work. So this isn't like just cash money deposited in your account and you just have it to do whatever you want to with it. And you were talking about the homeschool scholarship money, savings money, whatever you want to call it. It's all kind of the same. The names get used. Those terms get used interchangeably, as you know, in the school choice vernacular. $1,000. Some are saying, well, gee, why not the full amount that goes to the public school now that comes from the state, roughly $7,000. And as you said, some are saying, I don't want that money. So, and as you pointed out, well, they don't have to take that money. Nobody's forcing them to. And by the way, let's talk about private schools. One of the things you hear is that I don't want money going to private schools, which the MSAs would allow. People object to that, and there are a number of reasons they do. One of those is that, well, they don't have to be accountable and responsible for educating students to the same standards that public schools do. React to that.
Well, I mean, the bottom line is they already have an accountability system that's been out for years. If you're a part of if you're a part of a private school, there are about 3 different organizations you can be a part of, is my understanding. And the bottom line is they have had those systems set up for years. The reality is it's not as though those systems haven't been set up. One of the complaints to us when we were having some discussions about this were if we changed that for them, it would more than likely make a lot of these schools not want to take a part of this. Well, we want this to be a system that works for everybody. And the bottom line is, if you change that for them and then you take that out, you give far less choice across the board to our parents. So it's not as though there's not an accountability model out there set. But I will say this, and I genuinely believe this, if the canary in the cave on this is a parent. If the parent thinks that the school is not providing the kind of education that they want for their child, guess what they can do? Leave. There's nothing about that should be that hard. It's the same reason they leave a public school. It's the same reason that they choose to do that. I had someone yesterday on the floor make the comment, and they're not wrong. We do have school choice in Mississippi, but it's only for people that can afford to do it, or they're for the people that are working 2 and 3 jobs just so that their child is not harmed. You know, that's a terrible way to go out here and tell people, oh, you have school choice, only if you do it exactly the way I tell you. Just as long as Uncle Sam, right, Big Brother, tells you how to spend this money for your child, and we never do that. I mean, the reality is we don't tell people where to send their kid to college. Right. We don't tell them where to send their kid to go to the doctor. And there is public money going to these places, and I mean private doctors, private schools. We've got all kind of Pell Grants and everything across the board. This business that somehow public money in K through 12 is this sacred trust is not true. We spend money on roads with private contractors. And trust me, if you don't think that you want private contractors to build your road, let's stop doing that. You'll find out how quickly your roads get messed up. This business that somehow this is some horrible big idea that is different than anything else we've done is just not true. Parents. One of the things that it amazes me, when you ask anyone who your first teacher was, you can see them thinking back, and generally they'll go to that kindergarten teacher, that first grade teacher, and I do the same thing. I had a wonderful first grade teacher that I loved dearly. She's passed away now, but I'm not going to say her name on the air. And I think about her daily. She was one of the toughest ladies I ever met, but she was one of the best ladies I ever met. But you know what? She really wasn't my first teacher. My first teacher was my mom and dad.
Sure.
And my dad's got a 6th grade education. He grew up in the Delta. He was a sharecropper. And when we were growing up, he's the first one. My mom and dad were the first people that come to the table, and they taught me how to say my first words. They taught me how to tie my shoes. They taught me how to do all of the things that you have to do before you even make it to kindergarten. That's your first teacher. This business that somehow there's someone else out there that knows their child better is completely wrong. Now, I have heard the argument that not all parents are going to do this. Well, that's like telling me that we only have a certain amount of life jackets, and we're not going to turn these life jackets out to the boat that may be sinking because we don't have enough life jackets. We need better parents. I would never make that argument. I'm not suggesting that HB2 is the end all and be all of what we need to be doing in education, but it is a very small piece of the puzzle that will make it better. And as long as it continues to make it better, I'm going to be for it. And I believe that in everybody's heart, if they genuinely sit down and think about this, nothing I have said is untrue about this. Nothing I have said that suggests that we're trying to harm. I want to have the best public schools. I want the schools that aren't doing well to get better. But they're not going to get better by doing nothing. And where we are right now is the naysayers want us to do nothing. I've got schools out there that only have 800 to 1,000 total kids in the whole system. They fight me every step of the way to talk about consolidation. And I'm just usually talking about administrative consolidation, just to give us a chance to give these kids some good leadership and the ability to not spend another $1 million on 2 administrative sides that you only need 1 to do. We've got more superintendents, more administrative dynamics in the state of Mississippi than the vast majority of states in this nation. We've got 3 million people in the state of Mississippi, but we are constantly compared with the states that have twice the population, twice the money, And then on top of it all, we were told, we want you to stay with the Southeastern average on teacher pay.
Yeah.
It's an interest factoring in on this, and I'm completely in favor personally of a teacher pay increase. So let me be very clear about that.
Okay.
But the reality is, if you want to compare us to all of these other places as far as the Southeastern average on teacher pay, why don't you take us and compare us in the sense of what they're doing in their school system too, and allow for us to have some of that conversation as well without suggesting that it's going to break the bank or we're going to destroy public schools. It doesn't.
Yeah. So this bill, just to point out, does increase the pay for assistant teachers, but not teachers. Now, do you think that you guys in the House, the Senate has a bill to do both. Do you think you guys in the House will do something to increase teacher pay in a separate measure?
I think that we're having discussions about that right now.
Okay.
The reason we did not put a teacher pay increase in this bill, when we were discussing this, I had some superintendents, some educators come to me, and they said, well, you're going to try to force this down our throats by putting a teacher pay increase in this. And if somebody that wants to vote against this will say, right, well, you're making us vote against a teacher pay if we're against this. And I said, tell you what, we're going to take that out. I said, I am going to go ahead and put our student teachers in this. Y'all, their starting pay for a student teacher is $17,000. We're raising it to $20,000. I'll be honest, that's still not enough.
Sure. But
the reality is we were trying to figure out a way to address at least that portion of this. We're not done talking about teacher pay.
Okay.
I do think that across the board, there's a lot of people in Mississippi that work for our government in the state haven't seen pay increases in 10 years.
Totally true.
Maybe we should have a conversation in general about that.
Well, I totally agree. Well, we are out of time, but we certainly appreciate your time. You hung in there with us for an hour. Very much appreciated. Representative Rob Roberson in the House there, chairs the Education House Committee. I'm going to tell you congratulations because I know you supported this and I know you worked your rear off on this, you and the Speaker in particular and others, of course. But I know you had your heart and soul in this, and we appreciate it, and we appreciate you spending quality time. Thanks, Rob. Appreciate it, man.
Thank you. God bless.
Hey, this is Bob, and if you're
You're listening to Middays with Gerard Gibert, here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays from the Element Wealth Studio. It's our pleasure to welcome now Kelly Bennett, Multimedia Journalist, SuperTalk Mississippi News. Oh, well, the old Chiron is acting up there. Oh, my gosh. It's It's one of them technology days, I guess. Struggling a bit with that. All right, Kelly, what do you think?
Well, I don't want to go over because you had such a great interview just now with Representative Roberson about the House Education bill. But we did have Leah Ferretti on with Lucian Smith this morning. She's the director of Mississippi Ready.
Yep. And
she was talking about the House-passed education reform bill, which is over 500 pages long. And she really got into the minutia of this bill. And she talked about something I really hadn't heard about this morning. It's something called accountability dashboards, which are included in the bill. So Let me give her an opportunity to explain.
So right now, if you go to any district's website, and some districts may have it, but it's not required of them to have any of their information transparent. And that is so necessary for families when they're making their decisions on where their children are going to school. So this would make easy to read public dashboards that show performance, growth, attendance, readiness, and financial data of the district. So I feel like that transparency component is so important.
She also mentioned that the bill gets away from a lot of the focus on state testing.
And then another component that no one's really talking about is the decreasing in state testing or overall testing. My children are in the public sector, and I feel like they are being tested to death. Teachers are required to teach to these tests. They're required to administer these tests, and we've got to stop doing all this testing. We've got to do it, and let teachers get back to basics and do what their craft lets them do, is teach our kids.
And I know there was a lot of discussion on the Senate. Basically, it didn't look like they were going to back this bill. The big argument seems to be over the transference of public to private dollars with these Magnolia student accounts. Senate Education Committee Chair Dennis DeBar was on with us earlier this week, and he basically stated he believes that it violates the state constitution.
Section 208 of our Mississippi Constitution says no public funds shall be appropriated to non-public schools. And so what I think the House has done is they put the cart before the horse. I think we need to clarify the constitutional issue on that, because if we were to pass vouchers this year, whatever it is, whatever number it is, there's going to be a lawsuit filed by the left-wing groups out there challenging it.
And House Speaker Jason White was on not long after that, and he said this is not how it's working. And he really didn't mince words with his response to that, Gerard.
But for my friends in the Senate if they're hung up on the Constitution, they need to get on that ballot initiative bill that they've been so stubborn and reluctant on. So if we're going to really cling to the Constitution, let's cling to all aspects of it that we can't seem to find consensus on down there.
There are so many education bills going through right now. The state lawmakers introduced a bill in the House that would ban student cell phone use during academic hours. State Health Officer Dr. Dan Edney discussed the benefits of House Bill 570.
I actually served on the legislative task force for mental health for K through 12. That was summer before last, and that was one of the recommendations that came out of the task force. We have to mitigate the amount of time our children are spending on social media, and that cell phones are dominating their lives, and it's contributing in an adverse way to the mental health issues of our children, but it also makes them more sedentary.
So that's kind of a statewide look at what's going on education-wise. There's some college education news I could get into for you in a minute, but I wanted to talk about this because this story just came out yesterday. Public schools in Wilkinson County are now under state control. The Mississippi State Board of Education announced Thursday that the county schools had been placed into a district of it's called a district of transformation, due to their inability to provide students with an adequate and stable education. Wilkinson County is the state's lowest performing school district. It's been F-rated for 2 consecutive years. In addition to its serious academic deficiencies, state officials contend the Wilkinson County School District hasn't completed an annual financial audit since June of 2022. They received a probation accreditation status for 8 of the past 11 years and were cited for test security violations in 2023. That resulted in the high school not receiving an accountability grade. And there are other districts of transformation. That includes Noxubee County, Holmes County, Humphreys County, Yazoo City, and the Okolona separate school districts.
Yeah. I didn't know that. I knew that Wilkinson was one of the Fs, and I know it was at risk of entering into that status and being taken over by the Department of Education, but it sounds like it's official now. That has occurred.
Yeah, it really, education has been at the top this legislative session, which was not unexpected. And I guess, as a result of the education reform, the lawmakers have been talking about some of this other stuff. These ancillary issues are coming into play as well.
Yeah, totally agree. So now this thing heads down to the Senate. Speaking of the Senate, it's the lieutenant governor that is recommending to eliminate the sales taxes on equipment purchased by our agricultural community buyers. Talk about that.
Yeah. They have actually introduced a bill that removed the state sales tax from the agriculture department equipment. And Hoseman says this would be a benefit to farmers and ranchers who've really been struggling.
We want to reduce the taxes on buying equipment for agriculture. We have a 1.5% sales tax. Agriculture, Richard, we've talked about that, is really, really, really struggling in Mississippi, and we want to help those.
And, you know, a 1.5% tax may not sound like much, Gerard, but this farm equipment costs millions and hundreds of thousands of dollars. So it would really make a big difference for those in the ag industry.
Yeah, it would certainly help. I think they're looking for anything. We talked to a prominent Mississippi farmer not too long ago, Ted Kendall, Gaddis Farms, and he went through all the challenges they're currently experiencing as well. Andy Gibson spoke about Rotary a couple of weeks ago, and he talked about how many of in particular our row crop farmers are all actually upside down, losing money on every acre farmed. So that's not sustainable. So I think the legislature, Lieutenant Governor here in particular, is looking for any sort of relief that can be provided. Talk about the Egg Bowl. Give us the story there. What's happening?
We just found out the annual battle for the Golden Egg between Ole Miss and Mississippi State is going to take place on Black Friday, right after Thanksgiving this year. The school made the announcement on Thursday. Kickoff time and TV coverage of the matchup will be determined at a later date. This will be the 123rd meeting between Ole Miss and Mississippi State. Man, they've been going at it in the Egg Bowl for a long time.
Yeah. So I had the Congressman Michael Guest on a couple of days ago talking about the president's proposal or demand, honestly, of the credit card companies to cap their interest rates at 10% for a year. What do you got for us there?
Yeah, you got to wonder when Senator Elizabeth Warren is behind such a thing. But anyway, Republicans seem to be pretty divided over the president's plan to cap credit card interest rates. What he wants to do is create a 1-year 10% interest rate cap. And Congressman Michael Guest, like many Republicans, is citing unintended consequences.
I think it's a double-edged sword. I think for those people with good credit, it works in their advantage. I think for those people who don't have exceptional credit, you'll see that credit card companies will be less likely to issue credit cards. People will be less likely to use that form of payment to be able to purchase goods and services. So I think you've got to be very careful when you look at that. In theory, yes, we would love to see interest rates go down, but when you start having the federal government come in and impose caps, there's the law of unintended consequences.
All right.
And then you're telling private companies what to do.
I disagree with this. Real quick before we go, beef prices.
Oh, man, they're up. They're going to stay up. They're trying to a lot of the blame is going on shrinking herd sizes due to recent droughts. It looks like they're replenishing the herd, but it's going to take a while for beef prices
ground
to
beef
go
expected to be $10 in about a month a pound, $10 a pound. Appreciate it, Kelly.
I don't know if I see that, but yeah.
That's what they're saying. Appreciate it, Kelly.
Gerard.
Thank you. Coming right back, folks.
From the Seabrook, Mississippi, is with Gerard Gibert.
Let's do this.
On SuperTalk Mississippi.
Let's go.
Back to the room to catch my breath before I start off again. Living on without a moment to spend, to pass an evening with a drink and a friend. I let my skin get too thin.
We're back with you in the Element Well studio. Whole lot of stuff going on. The president is really aiming to make the cost of living and life in general more affordable in these United States. He's got a number of proposals yesterday he introduced a rather comprehensive health care plan. I guess it's comprehensive in that it touched a lot of areas, but it's a bit light on the specifics, shall we say. One of the things that we should pass on, Rhino, that honestly I was pleased to see in that it validated what my theory has been that I've shared on this program many times about the rising cost of health care. And that is this, that last year we spent $5.3 trillion on health care. A fairly significant increase, by the way. But all the research and all the information concerning this rather dramatic increase in spending on the size of what's called the healthcare economy, the HCE, is not the result of the increase across the board in prices for healthcare services and pharmaceutical and medical devices. Rather, Rhino, something I've said many times, and I think you've acknowledged and agreed, it's because we just added so many new things being new treatments, new procedures, new drugs, new therapies. Didn't even exist. Weren't a twinkle in the eye a couple of years ago. So we're spending more money because there's more to buy. Is not the weight loss drugs, are they not just a prominent example of that? Something that didn't exist a short, 3 years ago, 4 years ago?
I mean, they existed, but they weren't used for weight loss.
Okay.
It was for the treatment of diabetes.
Right. But now it's been discovered these are pretty effective for weight loss. That's a problem in our country. Not only that, it contributes, as you know, to disease. So, but on the front end, there's this super demand for these drugs. These pharmaceutical companies are selling the heck out of this stuff. Now, it is true that they did lower the prices because the president really applied a lot of pressure to them. So the cost of those drugs has been dragged down, has fallen. But the point I'm making is that this sharp increase in spending on health care is not because it went up. It's because we just have a lot more in the catalog to buy. Just using that analogy, if you will. So, and I don't know that that's going to slow down. Is that a bad thing? I mean, people keep wanting it, right? So you couldn't buy these weight loss drugs a few years ago, except, as you indicated, for a prescription for diabetes, type 2 diabetes, right? So now all of a sudden, these things are being prescribed. And this is one of the many examples. There are tons more. I'm just using that one because that one seems to have gotten a lot of press, a lot of attention. It's a lot more pervasive. But now it's $5.3 trillion dollars total health care spending. It was 4.7 or 8 a couple of years ago last time I checked it. So it has risen considerably. What the president comes out with a plan to address the cost of health care. And look, it's subject to debate as to whether or not this truly would cause your health care spending to decrease. I personally do not think it will. Now, there's a difference between, I guess, are you just seeing a decrease in the nominal price of health care versus, well, now you can buy cheaper insurance because the cheaper insurance also covers less. So it's not like that the cost of your insurance that you're buying today is going down. I don't expect that to happen. Don't look for that to occur anytime soon. But you might have available to you lower cost plans that cover less, and you may be fine with that. And so, again, this is the other thing to keep in mind that I think gets lost in all this discussion. Virtually every bit of this targets the individual market. And the vast majority of us get our insurance from our employer. In fact, it's about 85%. That's just typical. That's been the case since World War II, when fringe benefits were added to the equation in employment and compensation packages. And that was all because of price and wage controls implemented in World War II, because we were fighting a war and we were draining our resources. And so employers, in an effort to be competitive in their recruitment of employees, added these benefits, which were not controlled by the wage controls of not under the control of the wage impositions in World War II. That's where that was born. Before that, there was no such thing as the group market for insurance. It was all because of wage controls. Isn't it interesting, Rhino, how the private sector in particular, individuals, people as well, they always figure out a way to circumvent government mandates and programs. That's why I'm not a big fan of a lot of the things that are on the table, such as capping credit card interest rates. Something will happen to get around that, figure that out. What it would mean is that a whole lot of people would lose their credit cards. You just cut them up because they would be useless.
Or the limits lowered to the point where it doesn't matter anymore.
Yeah. You may also have like annual fees you have to pay, right? In lieu of, you know what else you'd lose? All those rewards programs, gone. That wouldn't exist anymore. So the economic model just doesn't work. It's not economically viable. It sounds good on paper, and I know it's popular, and yeah, man, let's reduce those interest rates, but those companies aren't going to survive, honestly, on that basis. And you say, well, yeah, okay, cut their profit down to half or cut it by 2/3. So what that causes, I know, second-order thinking, is investors say, well, that's not a very good return anymore, so I'm pulling my money out. Then they got less capital to loan and operate a credit card program. That's the unintended consequences of government control in that respect. So in this great health care plan, as the president is calling it, he once again wants to send money directly to consumers so they can buy insurance. Now, again, this only applies to the individual market. This doesn't apply to the group market. So if you're out there and you get your insurance, like the vast majority of those with commercial coverage do from their employer, this doesn't affect you. This is only in the individual market where folks buy their insurance in the exchanges, the marketplaces created in Obamacare. So the way this would work is you'd still get a subsidy for buying, which is the way the Obamacare exchanges work, coverage in the marketplace. But the theory is you're going to get a health savings account to accompany that. Thus, you could buy lower-cost insurance that has less coverage. In the insurance world, they would call that, has a lower actuarial value, meaning it just covers less. You're responsible for more. Your insurance company's responsible for less, but you're going to have this health savings account. It's been proposed in the range of $1,000 to $1,500, which ain't a whole lot, to be honest with you. He also wants to. This is kind of interesting. He wants to reinstate the cost sharing reductions. They're called CSRs. That's just additional subsidy to pay for your out-of-pocket costs, your deductibles, your co-insurance, your co-pays. Well, that was part of the original Obamacare. It was during the president's first term when he repealed those. Now he's reinstating them. So we went from having them to repealing them to now reinstating them, talking specifically about the cost-sharing reductions. That's another feature of the great health care plan. He wants to slash prescription drug prices, and that's just more negotiation with the drug companies. And then something I do support, I'm not exactly sure how much difference it would make in the price of health care, and that's just to really intensify price transparency. I think there'd be a huge cost associated with that because the proposal here is to require the insurance companies. Your doctor orders surgery, for example, and your insurance company would cover that under the the terms of your insurance policy under those provisions. And the insurance company under this proposal would be required to shop those services and then disclose to you, okay, this is what that procedure, that surgery would cost from these different surgeons and hospitals and the providers of that service. Coming right back.
Up of Mississippi.
Are we going to do this? Middays with Gerard Gibert.
Keep rolling. 3, 2, 1.
On SuperTalk Mississippi.
Somewhere along the hotel room that the guy started to realize that eternal fate has turned his back on here. It's too late. It's 2 a.m. Fear is gone. It's 2 a.m. The guns still warm. Yeah, there's a storm on the loose. Sirens in my head. Wrapped up in silence. All circuits.
Welcome back. Middays, SuperTalk Mississippi. Go to myelementwealth.com or call 601-957-6006 to let Element Wealth help you find your balance between income, growth, and guarantees. They always have around this time every year. Rhino does Element Wealth for their clients and prospective clients. Kind of have an overview of the economy, the markets, investing, so forth. That presentation typically provided by Jeremy Nelson, president of Element Wealth, who's been in this studio many times. I attended the event in my neck of the woods. They're doing it. They have offices in, I think, Alabama and Louisiana as well, and doing several of these events across the state. Did a great job. Laid everything out. Really appreciate that. Jeremy's a smart guy, and I think provided lots of valuable insight. Now, it's no surprise, Rhino, that room primarily, those in attendance, folks that are either approaching retirement or have retired, right, that have built a nest egg and looking for somebody to take care of it. So not surprised. Kind of neat, though. So I wanted to kind of clarify this thing that I was talking about with respect to the president's great health care plan. And again, primarily focuses on the individual market. And just to clarify, if that's confusing, I know the vast majority of people understand this, but for those, just in case you don't, individual market just means you purchase your insurance directly from the insurer, where those in what's called the group market, those are employees of a company, an entity. It doesn't have to be a private company. It can be a nonprofit as well, but an entity that has an organizational staff, if you will, and an org chart, a role of employees of that organization. The company will negotiate contracts for coverage with one or more insurers. Some companies self-insure and then pay third parties to administer that for them. Those are typically larger companies that have a big enough pool of employees to accommodate the risk associated with self-insuring. If you have a small group, it's virtually impossible because you could have, as you know, Rhino, one catastrophic medical event, that'd wipe it out. But when you're spreading that across a big pool, the risk is lower, is mitigated. But the bottom line is, in the group market, your employer negotiates the various health care plans available to its employees, and then the employer typically shares in the cost of that. If they've got more than 50 employees, by law they have to, in accordance with the Affordable Care Act. They have to cover a certain amount of the premium cost to make it, quote, affordable. And that is defined as 8.5%, I think it may be 9% now, of the employee's income. Anything over and above that would mean that they would be in violation of the law and they'd have to pay a penalty. So that's the group market. And almost all this discussion, virtually all the discussion, the cause of the shutdown of the government, all hinged on the individual market. About 24 million in that. The group market, over 80 million. Nothing about those of us who get our insurance from our employer. And what's in this plan the president is proposing mainly, again, focuses on the individual market, such as we're going to send you either $1,000 or $1,500, depending on your age, a year into a health savings account that can only be used for qualifying health care expenses, including the purchase of insurance. But the theory is, okay, if you've got that additional money, you would buy lower cost insurance on the exchange, which has less comprehensive coverage, just covers less, or you're responsible for more of it. So you may have higher deductibles and copays and coinsurance, but lower premiums, but you got $1,500 in a health savings account to help offset that. That's the theory behind this. I'm sort of on the fence about how beneficial that would be. I think a lot of people would be shocked, Rhino, when they find out, wait, I bought this coverage, and you're telling me this isn't covered? Yeah, well, you bought the low-cost coverage, right? That's the shock people get because it's complicated. It's just nobody's going to sit down and read all the deadgum fine print in every one of those policies. It's impossible. You get a little more help from your employer. That's the benefit of getting group coverage, can help you with that. And they'll come in and make a big presentation. Will the carriers, the brokers. But not in the individual market. You're going to get somebody on the telephone or in a chat bot that's going to help you with that. Fox News, SuperTalk News coming up next. Much more to talk about from the Element Wealth studio. Stay with us.
Your home. And now, another hour of the talk that keeps Mississippi talking. Middays with Gerard Gibert.
Begin your transmission now.
Now on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. Hour 3, the afternoon portion of Middays from the Element Wealth Studio is live on this
Friday, y'all.
So just sort of cleaning up the rest of this, the president's great health care plan, just to keep you in the know on the key features there. And again, not a lot of details yet. And look, I applaud the president for paying attention to what people are saying, which is the cost of living in this country's too expensive, and we need some relief. And, man, he's touching on all the areas. I give it to him. But I do get concerned when you cross over into maybe that's a little too much government in inserting itself into the market. And while it looks great on paper and may appear at first glance to provide benefit, the long term is different, the long-term outcome. The main thing is the main provisions of this health care plan, lower drug prices, and it's something he's talked about a lot. He's calling on the Congress to codify most favored nation policies for drug prices. He also wants to increase, I do agree with this, Rhino. I know this is an area where you have much expertise. He wants to increase access to over-the-counter medications, and that would, of course, bypass PBMs in reducing costs. You have any thoughts about that? You have concerns about that? Or is it kind of case-by-case basis?
Usually PBMs aren't concerned with over-the-counter. Over-the-counter means it's not prescription.
Right. So that's what I mean. He's wanting to allow more drugs to be sold over-the-counter to bypass the layered-on PBM component.
Yeah, I mean, there are the best examples that people are probably most familiar with are antihistamines.
Yeah.
Like Zyrtec was once prescription only. Allegra was once prescription only. Now those are available over the counter.
Yeah.
I think there's been a recent push for certain worm medications.
That's right.
To be moved from prescription to over-the-counter.
Yep.
There are several medications that if you take them by the directions, they're perfectly fine over-the-counter. It's just they have risks if you don't follow the directions.
Yeah.
But there's been a bit of a softening on that when you see people realize that, well, Tylenol's over-the-counter. It's been over-the-counter for a long time. And if you take too much of that, it kills your liver. So there are already medications over-the-counter that can be dangerous if you don't follow the instructions.
Yeah.
Now, I don't think you're going to ever see anything like you had at one point in our country's history where habit-forming or addictive medications would be available over-the-counter, but there's no appetite for that. Like at one point in time, you could go to the pharmacist and sign your name and get what they called little black beauties, which was basically meth in pill form. It was amphetamines. And you didn't have to have a prescription. You just had to sign your name at the pharmacist.
Yeah.
Those days are long gone. You're not going to see something like that over the counter. But, yeah, if you can get safe drugs from behind the counter to over the counter and take out all the middleman of having to go to the doctor and pay them, get a prescription, hand the prescription to the pharmacist, pay them, then, yeah, you're going to lower costs.
Okay. Well, that makes sense. I actually support that. I would say that leans more towards freedom and less government regulation. We got to be thoughtful about it. I agree with you. And then I already talked about this idea of we're going to deposit money in a health savings account, and which would permit you to use that for the purchase of insurance, which I don't believe you can do now with health savings account. You can cover out-of-pocket costs, but not the actual purchase of premiums. And, of course, what he thinks would happen there is that folks in the exchanges, doesn't apply to the group market, again, would buy the bronze plans, the lowest cost plans, which have a lower actuarial value, simply means in insurance vernacular, that simply means it covers less. You're responsible for more, we're responsible for less, therefore we're not going to charge you as much. That's pretty straightforward. So that's one of the things. And the other thing I should say is with respect to the most favored nation drug pricing, that's in exchange for not putting tariffs on those drugs. So that was I think a good use, honestly, of tariffs as a tool to achieve a good positive outcome. So we avoided the tariff, but in exchange for that, the drug makers say, okay, we'll lower the prices. And then requiring both providers and insurers who accept Medicare and Medicaid to post their prices, report claim denial rates, just a little bit more of a transparent report card, profits versus payouts. Well, folks that listen to our show already know that because I've shared that data countless times. Usually that's a surprise to people. Gee, I thought they made more money than that. Wait times, of course, in the hospitals. You know, that's gotten to a point where in some communities I've ridden through, not in Mississippi, I haven't seen this. There are actually billboards that have real-time display of the wait time in an ER.
Very popular in Florida.
Yeah, that's where I've seen it.
Because,
Texas,
I mean, there's a large retirement population in Florida, so healthcare has to compete a bit more.
And more subject to needing something urgent as well. So, and then ending what he calls kickbacks from PBMs to middlemen. So those are the major provisions. And I did check the latest data with respect to the number who get their insurance in what's called the non-group, the individual market, and through their employers. It's 161 million through their employer. The individual market, 21 million. So that's the point I'm making, is that these 161 million, really not a lot in any of these proposals that affects the folks that get their insurance from their employer, which is the vast majority of us. And then Medicaid, it's up to about 70 million. Medicare, 50 million. So so as many people get their insurance through some government insurance program, Medicaid, Medicare specifically, and then there's the military, and that's about 4.5 million, as due from their employer in the commercial market. So it's almost half and half, commercial coverage versus government-provided insurance in our country. Back to the some questions that come up, Rhino, and you can get us updated on this about the ballot initiative, the ballot measure process. As you know, that was nullified. And the speaker, when Kelly played that little clip from the speaker, I did think that was a pretty good response on his part, retort to Senator Dennis DeBar's contention, this may be unconstitutional. And the speaker says, well, what about this ballot initiative process that our Constitution provides that you guys haven't seen fit to help us get restored, right? I thought that was a good comeback there because we've passed measures in the House the last couple of years, except not last year when they said, it's worthless because we know it's going to get killed in the Senate. You were updating me earlier. Maybe there's a new measure, right?
Yeah, I'm trying to find where I put the note about it, but we had the one that was House Concurrent Resolution 3 filed by Tracy Arnold that would change the Constitution to fix it, essentially. The issue that was the reason it got struck down in the first place. And I thought I saved it somewhere around here. No, that's not it. There was, I want to say it was Sheck Taylor.
Yeah, that's right. You said that.
And I can't find it now, but it would allow for the population to put law on the ballot, to change, to institute, amend, or repeal statute via ballot measure.
Got you. Okay. So I'm a little surprised it's coming from a Democrat, but I don't know. I mean, that's fine. Now you know this in the House at least.
Yeah, it's concurrent resolution 20.
Okay, so in the House in the past, when such measures have been offered, I'm thinking back on who did that. I know Representative Price Wallace. You remember he had one, and there was one other member of the House. Name escapes me right now, but I do remember that received bipartisan support in the House. It just couldn't get any traction in the Senate. Senate wanted to make all kinds of amendments to it to the point where we might as well not even have a ballot measure. You okay? You're checking the box and saying we're getting one, kind of like the school choice portability bill. Okay, we're giving you public-to-public transfer, except it's limited to these three categories, which, okay, after all 10 of those people take advantage of it, then what?
As the session goes on, my list gets longer and longer, so it's harder to find stuff quickly. But there was another one, another bill dropped. I'll find all the info on it and give it after the break. But it would allow, or it would disallow any foreign entity from putting money towards a ballot measure.
Okay. All right. Foreign entity. Coming right back in the Element Well studio.
At the Citizens...
Attention, adoring fans! It's time for...
Middays with Gerard Gibert on SuperTalk Mississippi.
I'd have to put that in the category of another quintessential 80s tune there, right? That just sounds like the 80s. Orchestral maneuvers, if you leave. Appreciate that, Rhino. From the all-hit request line. So, in this country, a lot of people, even, unfortunately, some on the right.
Well, before we move on, I did say I would give the information for the bill. It's from Representative Yancey.
Yeah.
House Bill 556 would prohibit a foreign national from making any contribution or expenditure in connection with any state or local ballot measure.
Got to have a ballot measure first, though. I'm okay with that, actually. I don't want foreign interference in that. I kind of draw the line when there are restrictions on domestic investment if they want to back a ballot measure. I think that's grossly overblown and just more unwarranted fear. So a lot of people in this country, mainly on the left, but unfortunately there are a few of our friends on the right as well that get all bent out of shape about executive pay. Oh, they make too much money. But what you never hear any complaints about are those whose occupation is professional sports. So Chicago Cubs, former Chicago Cubs, and now Houston Astros star outfielder Kyle Tucker, he inked him a $240 million 4-year deal yesterday. Do you know how many CEOs of public companies make $60 million cash a year?
Not many.
Cash. Zero.
Cash.
This is cash. He's not getting stock. He's getting cash. And so anytime they talk about CEO pay, they fail to mention the vast majority of that is in stock. I'm not saying it's worth nothing, but as we have explained so many times, they can't go out and just sell a big chunk of that stock. They can sell small increments of it and not worry investors, but when the CEO starts dumping a bunch of their stock, then investors get nervous. How come you're selling? Don't you think your company's going to do well? And so that's not really practical. I just find it interesting. Of course, he's just below Ohtani. He's got a $70 million a year, 10-year deal. No CEO has anything remotely close to that.
I mean, how much money does NVIDIA make?
NVIDIA made last year just under $90 billion on revenue of about 125. It's mind-boggling. And
Jensen Huang's pay package is a $1.5 million base salary.
Right.
And last year he took home just shy of $50 million with performance-based rewarding.
Probably options and some cash in there as well, right? Some grants, some options.
$60 million.
He didn't hit the $60 million that Kyle Tucker hit, and people may say, well, that's apples and oranges. Well, is it? So do you not think what Jensen Huang does in terms of value to society, does he not produce as much as Kyle Tucker does? No disrespect to Kyle. He's an incredible player, right? But here's the deal. Let the market figure that out. The Astros owners have said, hey, it's worth paying this guy $60 million a year. They've done the math on that, and they know it puts the butts in the seats and gets us all to watch, and that generates all kinds of revenues and merchandise and everything else that comes along with being a professional sports franchise. In the case of Jensen Huang, he is running a company that makes chips. That's what they do. They make computer chips.
I don't know what I liked on my sports algorithm to have these pop up, but with that one, and there was the Dodgers deal, and there were a few high-profile big-dollar deals in Major League Baseball. And my feed has been full of people that's doom and gloom, and they're saying there's going to be a lockout, and they're going to miss a whole year. And I'm going, where is this coming from?
Unbelievable. Yeah. So it's kind of interesting to just think about all that sort of stuff. But I don't know where all that's going. But and by the way, the actual full year for NVIDIA was less than I'd cited. But
yeah, everybody's chiming in on the text line. Tucker went to the Dodgers from the Astros.
Okay, I missed it. Okay, I misread the actual article. So it's the Dodgers that scarfed him up and are paying him this big money. So they're putting him on the same team with Ohtani?
Mm-hmm.
Who owns the Dodgers? Somebody that's obviously got the dough to invest in something like that. The Dodgers do have great attendance. You can't deny that. And like I said, they've figured out that, yeah, this is in our best interest.
That's the Guggenheim Baseball Management.
Okay.
It's a consortium led by controlling owner Mark Walter with investors such as Magic Johnson, Peter Guber, Stan Kasten, Todd Bowley, Bobby Patton, Billie Jean King, and Lana Kloss.
Gotcha. Incredible. Well, super interesting. Derek in Greenwood just says, I won't budge from my belief that we should only have a public-to-public school choice situation. And he doesn't like the idea of public money being invested in private schools, following the kid to a private school if their families choose that as a better environment for them. I disagree with that. I'm for my public money producing the best outcome. If that public money, if that outcome is better when parents make the choice about where their children should be educated, that's what I'm for. I don't care if it's a charter school, a private school, a micro school, or a homeschool. I'm for the best outcomes. And that's consistent with the private sector, honestly. We seek the best outcome. And you know what? If you don't, the market punishes you. I also believe that this would improve the quality of public schools. Nothing, as I've said before, is a better motivator, right, than a little competition. And I do believe that that is the case here. So Derek says, I'll hold out for the Senate bill. Just so you know, Derek, the Senate bill, and this is for the benefit of everybody, not just Derek, but I'm still a little puzzled by why the original Senate bill would have permitted universal portability, public-to-public transfer, no restrictions on that, but it was amended. You and I have read that correctly, I believe. It was amended after it came out of committee, amended on the floor before it passed to restrict that portability to only 3 categories that I can see. And one of those we already have. I'm still confused as to why that got inserted, and that is children of parents or guardians who work in a public school could attend the public school that is the employer of their parent or guardian. And then children of military families would have the option of moving to a different public school without their homeschool consent. And then those who live 30 miles or more from a public school can choose a different school. That's kind of common sense, straightforward. That's it, though. Everybody else, sorry, you can't. You could have a really bad situation, but if you don't meet one of those 3 categories, you're not within those, you can't do it. Let's see, what else do we have coming on here? David Madison says, anything that Elizabeth Warren supports, I oppose, and so does Mississippi. That's in relation to the report of that we made earlier that the president wants to cap interest rates charged by credit card companies. So does Liz Warren. Actually has a bill to do just that. Bernie Sanders, I think, is a co-author or one of the sponsors of that situation. I can remember being able to go to the pharmacist and ask for the good cough medicine, says Mose. With a signature, you could get a codeine mixture. I think you still can.
No.
I don't think you can, yeah.
But he's right. There were several medications that are considered controlled substances now that you could just sign for in previous generations.
David Monticello says government-funded insurance, the largest number is forced into that plan. Your Medicare recipients, once you reach that wonderful age, you have no choice in the matter. Actually, not true, Dave. As long as you maintain continuous coverage and you want to stay on your employer's plan, then you can do that. You do not have to enroll in Medicare. But if you don't enroll in Medicare when you meet the magic age, if you're without insurance for a period of time, I think it's 6 months or more, then you would have to pay a penalty when you ultimately do sign up. I know about this, Dave, because I actually fit into that category. And so I am not on Medicare, though I'm qualified for it. I have remained on the private coverage available here at SuperTalk. That's actually because my Medicare, because of my income, would cost more than what I have to pay for my insurance here at SuperTalk, which is crazy. It's upside down. Coming right back in the Element Wealth studio.
From the Seabrook.com.
And now, the talk that keeps Mississippi talking.
Now, on to the real part.
Dynamite! On SuperTalk Mississippi.
Landfill management, that's because I hear what you're saying. He says, I disagree. I'm a small business, and I had Blue Cross for 30 years with no claims 6 months before I reached 65. They notified me. You probably had it in the individual market, right? That's different. In the group market, it's quite the opposite. That's why I want this to be so clear to our audience. I'm not trying to talk down to you. I hope that doesn't come out that way. It's because I want you to understand when the politicians talk about all this health care stuff, you know this, Rhino, they don't make that distinction. And there are huge differences between the group market and the individual market. So when the Democrats, for example, say, well, before Obamacare, insurance companies could deny people for pre-existing conditions in the individual market, not in the group market, which is where the vast majority of people got their insurance from. By the way, that changed in 1996. That was codified into law in 1996. I remember in my company, I think I told you before, my partner's spouse couldn't get on our group coverage because of a pre-existing condition. He was the owner of the company. And then this law passed, that changed everything. And then for a while there, remember, there was a waiting period. Well, we just got to see first if they're sick before we put them on. That's been eliminated. So a private company can't dig into your medical history only if you've had a break in coverage. Then if you have a break in coverage, I think it's 6 months, they can dig more, and they actually can deny you. But and that's why we have this thing called COBRA. Because if you're separated from your employer, either you quit, you're looking for a new job, or your employer fired you, they have to offer the opportunity to stay on the plan. You got to pay for it, but you don't have a break in coverage is the point. So, yeah, he says, I couldn't get a group. Exactly, I get it. So that's why I'm trying to make this distinction, guys, is that there's a huge difference in the way all these rules apply. And for the most part, all this debate you hear in Washington among all those politicians, and Rhino, I ain't sure they understand all this stuff like this, but they're all talking about the individual market.
I mean, you hear them talk about much simpler topics, and they get it just flat wrong. So, they can't wrap their head around this.
It's a huge difference, though. The rules are completely different. Group coverage, and then, as you know, there's the large groups and there's the small groups. It even gets further complicated. Yeah, the state group market. Right, I get it. So somebody says Blue Cross forced me to get on Medicare. Right, that's the state. The state has law. They want to get you off their payroll. That's different. That doesn't apply to the private sector. By the way, the state is self-funded. Blue Cross is a third-party administrator, what's called a TPA, because they have a big enough pool. It's in their best economic interest to do so. On the C-Spire text line, I could go get cigarettes with a note from my dad when I was 10. Absolutely. I remember that as well. On the C-Spire text line, John from Grenada, first time to text us, it looks like, Rhino. If these people are against school choice, then how would they feel about parents taking the tax money they normally would pay on their property taxes for schools and paying it to the school of their choice, whether it be public or private? That simply allows parents to not only move their child to where they feel they get the best education, but also, to an extent, direct where that tax money is going. Yeah, and that's something that makes sense, John, I'll tell you that. But as you know, Rhino, that's not very popular. And this bill, by the way, it's important to point out, and all school choice bills that I'm aware of, programs, I should say, in the country and all the other states, only deals with the state portion. The typical model that is used across the country is the one used here in Mississippi. There's a state funding component, there's a local funding component, and there's a federal funding component. And the local component, that's those property taxes you pay. You can see it on the bill. School district taxes. It's clearly denoted on the invoice. There's someone else that says something. Yeah, James wanted to know which Republicans voted against school choice, and I did commit that I'd read that list. Make sure I got this right, Rhino, if you can. Representatives Richard Bennett, Andy Boyd, Billy Calvert, Carolyn Crawford, Becky Curry, Jill Ford, Greg Haney, Stacey Hobgood Wilkes, Timmy Ladner, Clay Mansell, Kent McCarty, also the vice chairman of the Education Committee is Kent, Missy McGee, Dana McClain, Gene Newman, Fred Shanks, Troy Smith, and Lance Varner. Now, Clay DeWeese, Jerry Turner, and Price Wallace abstained. Check that out, Rhino, because I think that was the
Jerry
Dick Turner
he
came back and voted. Right. That's why it went from 60-58 to 61-59, right? So,
and if I'm not mistaken, DeWeese had to leave the chamber to do something with his committee getting ready because he had to have a committee meeting right after the vote was held, and Price Wallace was on the farm.
Okay. Well, I don't want to speak for any of those. That wouldn't be fair. But Clay is from Oxford. We've interviewed him before. Oxford has a very high-performing school district. School choice is not popular. The bottom line is where the districts are good, generally speaking, the citizens of those districts want to protect what they have. They fear school choice would disrupt and would harm their districts. I disagree with them, but I appreciate their concern. I respect that. That has not been the case anywhere it's been implemented. But there may be something to that, the fact that Clay represents that area. We had Senator Nicole Boyd on yesterday. She, too, from Oxford. Now, she likely won't ever get a chance to vote on this. I'm not too optimistic this is going very far in the Senate at this point. I also want to point out that when Senator DeBar, you heard Kelly play the clip on the segment with her that this could be unconstitutional. Well, Senator DeBar, we currently have education savings accounts for dyslexic and special needs kids. Those can be used to enroll in a private school. Wouldn't that apply there? We have Pell Grants.
One would think.
Yeah. How about student loans? How about that? You're just saying the whole student loan program wouldn't apply because they would be attending a state school. Now, I know that's money that comes from the federal government, but my guess is there's probably some grants as well. There's some state piece of that. But I think that's a pretty weak argument, honestly. And I think the speaker was right in saying, well, what about this ballot initiative we have? Where are you on that, man? So be consistent, right? I think that's what people want more than anything, as much as anything, from their politicians. Just don't flip-flop. Just be consistent.
Whereas the only consistency we see coming from the Senate seems to be they consistently have their head up the rear.
On the C Spire text line, I live in a high-tax school district, yet elect to send my kids to private Christian school. Please allow me to apply any of my tax dollars to my children's education. Please raise the income limit. Don't punish my husband and me for both working. I hear you, and that's one thing that I was disappointed in, but I'll also admit I understand it because you know that this is probably as far as they could get to get something passed. Right, because they only had one vote to spare. And while I agree with this individual on the text line that says, why do we have to limit it to these income levels? And it's, by the way, it's not the federal poverty level. It's the median income. You pointed that out on the break to make sure we're clear on that, of the area. The median means in the middle. So it's everybody that's on the bottom half of the middle. It's the bottom half, specifically, actually. So those that are in the top half of the median, above the median income for the region, would not be eligible in the first set. And the way it works is it gets prioritized for those at the 100%, the half that's below 100% of the median level. Then it escalates to 200, then to 300. And that's just based on the number of takers.
The availability.
The availability, right. Because remember, they're limited. They're to 12,500 in year one. Escalates up to 20,000. And by the way, there's also a provision I found, Rhino, that if a public school, and by the way, they're required to submit their capacity data to the Department of Education, and if they don't have capacity, they can reject an applicant that wants to transfer from another public school. That's absolutely allowable. But the provision says if you get more applicants than you have space based on capacity, then you have to operate a lottery. You have to choose based on lottery. So no hand-picking, no discrimination, no preferential treatment. Final segment of Middays after the break.
The One Body Shop.
You know what that means.
Middays with Gerard Gibert.
We'll do it live.
On SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. This comes up a lot. What about people like my wife and myself paying property taxes with no children in school? So I think what gets missed in this whole discussion, Rhino, is that in general, going back to our founders, by the way, it's believed that an educated citizenry makes for a more prosperous and a nation with a higher standard of living. So we all have an interest in our citizenry be educated. So the taxes you pay do benefit you. You may not see it directly simply because you don't have a child in the school. But and I believe that. If you're educated, your chances of succeeding as an adult, meaning you don't draw welfare, you don't engage in crime, get involved in all sorts of other not-for-good activities. We have to believe that. And I want the best outcomes in education. I happen to believe that education choice produces those. Overall, some people think, I only care about my kids and those people that kind of live around me. That would be protectionist. I disagree with protectionist policies. My view is more consistent with that of conservatives who believe in a laissez-faire, free market approach and model. This person said, I won't get to hear you respond on this, but I hope that the lottery, if a school is at capacity, is fairly reviewed. The pre-K lotteries public schools do now are absolutely rigged. Yeah, I mean, I do too. I can't imagine that they wouldn't be, and I don't really have any evidence of being rigged. I'd ask you to supply some information that you could share with us if that's the case. I personally don't think this is going to be a problem, but I could be wrong. I just don't. Talking about school choice, aren't most of the daycares, which are all private and preschool programs, paid for with state and federal money? They are from the perspective that you get to deduct that. In some cases, there's even credits for that. That essentially is using public funding. It's a good point I hadn't thought about, but that's absolutely true. If you want to make this argument that we just got to restrict public money to publicly provided and operated services, you ain't going to win that argument, because that would mean the entire country would be nothing but government. That's communism. It would be owned by the government. I don't get that. I don't know why. Well, it's different. That's what I hear. Well, education, that's different. How? Is education not a service provided by, produced by humans? What's different about that? I don't see that. Ben from Madison says, it's a very weak argument to suggest it's unconstitutional. My understanding that this section, it's 208, was an anti-Catholic amendment targeting all the Catholic schools on the coast. Like y'all stated, we already use ESAs for certain situations. That's the dyslexic and the special needs. And Rhino, it was hell getting that through. They didn't want to do that. These same people.
Just like it was an uphill battle for the third grade reading gate.
Totally true. In other words, it wasn't implemented to protect public schools, says Ben. He's absolutely right. He does point out that he was a little disappointed in his Representative Jill Ford. She's always stood in opposition in respect to her against school choice. Jonathan McMillan, another rep in Madison County, he voted in favor of it. I talked to Jonathan last night, and he just said it was a tough vote, but he thinks it's good policy, and he's ready to move forward. Let's see what else. Somebody else said, if you, I'm looking for it, said basically you're not conservative if you don't believe in this. I can't find it now. I apologize for that.
It's from the 601. If you're going to claim to be a conservative, but yet you do not want freedoms such as freedom of education, are you a true conservative?
Okay. Yeah, I think that's a good point. Clearly, yeah. And then, James, we got you the list there. Clearly, this has become a key tenet of conservatism. It's supported at the federal level by the president, many others, many of the conservative red-run states also implementing these programs. So I do think that it is consistent with the principles of conservatism. I do believe that. Gerard Rhino, have a great weekend and stay warm, says Mose. Appreciate that. Do homeschool parents get a voucher? Yeah, they can apply for an MSA as well, $1,000. Again, it stops short of the total full $7,000 allocated to a student in public school. But I think this is another situation, Rhino, was this is the best they could get done to get the votes, to get something out there to at least expand education freedom. And there's also a cost associated with this because that would be new spending. Keep that in mind. When you're taking someone from the public school to the private school or another public school or even down to homeschool, that's not new spending. But existing homeschool parents, any sort of money's made available to them through these accounts, that's new spending, and that increases the overall general fund costs. Whew. Well, we are out here today, back Monday. Stay safe and God bless everyone.
A SuperTalk Mississippi media production.